welcome everyone. Hello, hello. We are so glad for those of you who could join us today live. And if you're watching this later on, we're just so glad that you're taking the time to check in and be a part of this. I want to know, are you ready to have your burning questions answered and demystified today on supplements? Well, our guest expert happens to be my amazing boss, Jordan Glenn. He is the Senior Vice President of Clinical Development at NeuroTrack. He has a PhD in exercise physiology, and a big part of his thesis work was in supplements. So I know for all of you that are listening, I'm always asking you to be honest and share with me your challenges. Well, here is a moment of truth and honesty from me. I met Jordan back in 2016, and he provided clinical supervision for the coaching team that I was a part of then. So Jordan, he noticed my timidness and insecurity in speaking up a lot of times in meetings and just in different projects. So before he left to do this meaningful work he is doing today at NeuroTrack, his parting advice to me was that I had a lot to offer, to believe in myself, and to do my best to be more vocal. And here we are today. So I am so thrilled to get to introduce him to you. Jordan, feel free to share more with us about your professional experience, your interest in supplements, and any fun or interesting things you'd like to share about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. And yeah, good to see everyone now and may watch it in the future. I have very personal ties to this project and everything. So I spent 4 years at the University of Arkansas working in the exact lab with Michelle Gray, who you all get to go see when you go in to do your testing. I also wrote the grant for the study that everyone is participating in. So I have a lot of ties to this particular project. And I get to go back to Fayetteville every 6 months or so, which I really enjoy. My doctoral work was done primarily in supplements on the performance side. So I worked with seniors who were looking to be bigger, faster, stronger. So individuals who were aging naturally, but just trying to stay physically competitive. But I also, during that time, I developed a very strong passion for supplements, not just in the exercise standpoint, but kind of across the board. And then when I took my work from the labs to the industry world, I've worked in diabetes, I've worked in heart disease, I've now worked in cognitive decline. And so I've gotten a chance to really expand out into learning about supplements for all these different conditions. And my goal today is to really not give you boring answers. And I say that because a lot of my answers are going to be similar to this. When it comes to supplements, when we think about what should we take for what and how and why, et cetera. I have a very love-hate relationship with supplements. I love what they are capable of doing in the right circumstances. I hate that they are marketed in a way that everything is a magic one fix pill, because that's not quite the case. So I'm looking forward to getting a chance to talk about it a little bit and answer any questions that we have.
Yeah. Oh, I know we are also eager. We were talking just a bit before you jumped in about how, we do know a lot about supplements. We hear about it all the time, and like, this is good for you, but really, like, is it going to really solve all of these problems? Is it going to take care of joint pain? Is it going to grow my hair? Is it going to make my skin glow? So yeah, we're so excited to hear expert advice about it. So yeah, just to kind of give an overview of what you all can expect today, we're going to be just discussing optimal ways to optimize, of course, brain function and overall health. So Jordan's going to like lay it out what their pros and the cons are of supplements. He's going to touch on some nutrient depletions that might happen when you're taking different medications, supplements that can support healing, pain relief, energy, and metabolism. And then at the end, we'll open it up to all your questions. So Jordan, give us the real inside scoop on the pros and cons of supplements. What are the benefits and setbacks here?
So the world of supplements is very large, and it continues to get larger. It's a very big industry. The short answer, which would probably would be my answer to many of the questions, is that supplements can be very, very effective, but usually only in circumstances in which an individual is deficient in something. So, you hear all kinds of things. You hear vitamin D, you hear calcium, you hear B12, you name it. And generally all of these supplements can be obtained through your daily diet, through doing other activities, etc. And the only reason that taking a supplement is going to be beneficial is if you are already not getting enough of it from another area. Vitamin D is a really, really good example. So we hear about vitamin D supplementation all over the place, but if you walked outside and spent 10 or 15 minutes in the sun every day, you're going to get enough right there without needing to take any sort of additional over the counter or whatever it may be. And this is going to be similar through vitamins. Your omega-3s obtained through foods. If you get it through your fish or whatever else, you don't need to supplement it. And so this is where I talked about where I have my love-hate relationship with supplements is for people that need them, for people that are deficient. If you have dietary restrictions, if you have any sort of medical condition that's preventing you from getting a certain amount of any sort of vitamin or mineral, they're unbelievable and very beneficial. But if you're free living and eating normal diet, going outside, doing your thing, a lot of times anyone ever watch The Big Bang Theory? I'm a
Yes,
big fan
love
of
that
that
show.
show. There's an early episode where Sheldon and Penny are in the supermarket together, and Penny is buying all these vitamins on the shelf, and Sheldon looks at her and says, all you're doing is buying the ingredients for very expensive urine. And a lot of times that is it's tongue in cheek, but it can be a very true statement. If you're already getting enough of something, all that's going to, at worst, it's going to be net neutral, and at best, it's going to be neutral, and at worst, it could actually be harmful if you take too much of a certain supplement.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh gosh. So I'm shocked. I thought I never thought that 10 to 15 minutes out in the sun would give me enough vitamin D. So that's something new. Uh, something recently I've noticed is I've started going for morning walks like around 6:30, 7 o'clock. And honestly, I really think it's tied. I'm getting better sleep. Like, is there something to that, Jordan? Like maybe that early morning sunlight?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say that it's early morning sunlight necessarily. I would say it comes down to outside and sunlight, and getting a lot of it for us is getting away from screens in
Mhm.
general. I
Yeah.
mean, most of us spend all day long in front of a screen, whether it's a laptop, whether it's a TV, whether it's a phone, whatever it may be. Getting away from that, getting outside, it is very, very, it will help you sleep better. So I try to, as someone whose entire job is in front of screens, I try to make a very big effort to just get outside, away from it. It's inside. I have the list of questions that Natalie sent me ahead of time, and so we're teasing into the sleep one a little bit, but there are all kinds of over-the-counter supplements for sleep. But being able to just get away from your screens will help you sleep. Getting outside will help you sleep. Whether it's in the morning, the afternoon, even the evening, all of that can help kind of your body reset a little bit and get away from the artificial or blue light that can really, really affect our ability to get some shut eye.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the vitamin S for the sun.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a great one.
Well, a lot of people that I talk to are on various medications. Like some of the popular ones that I hear are anti-diabetic, maybe blood lowering cholesterol medications, blood pressure medications, anti-inflammatory drugs. If they've had surgery, maybe they've been on antibiotics. Are these causing some nutrient depletions? And if so, like, I guess it kind of answers its own question, like how to replenish that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So my disclaimer to all of this is I'm a PhD. I always say I'm not that kind of doctor. And so I will kind of lay out what could be happening, but will also highly recommend, especially because we are recording, highly recommend that before you would make any changes, you speak to your physician, your primary care doctor, whoever that may be, because you would want to actually get your blood work done and understand if you are deficient in something before, jumping off the deep end into something like that. But there are A lot of different medications. So the short answer is almost every medication can cause a discrepancy or an issue with some other level of vitamin or mineral. So for example, if you're on a diabetic medication, whether that be metformin, insulin, et cetera, you can become it's very easy to become deficient in things like B12, vitamin D, vitamin E, zinc, iron, potassium. Antidepressants can have issues in CoQ10, also B12. If you are just on basic antibiotics, it can mess with your GI system. It can mess with your gut, that healthy bacteria in your gut, the probiotics, things like that, as well as all your B vitamins, et cetera. Almost everything will knock out B12 for whatever reason. B12 is one of the most fragile, let's call it fragile, vitamins in our body when it comes to how things are affecting medications, cholesterol medications, hormone replacement therapy, opiates, blood pressure medication. All of these have different interactions when it comes to what could potentially be happening from a vitamin and mineral level. But everyone's different. It's impossible to know on your own. So you're not going to, just because you're taking a diabetic medication doesn't automatically mean that you're going to be deficient in B12. You could be D, you could be C, you could be something else altogether. And so the only way to truly know what's happening, if something is indeed happening, is to go get blood work done. Is to, when you're with your physician, you say, hey, maybe you're feeling fatigue, common for B12, maybe you're feeling some other issues, other symptoms, and you say, hey, I think I might be having some deficiency in some vitamins and minerals. Can we do a blood work, a workup and understand where that may be? And that is one of those areas where supplementation can be so powerful, because side effects are vastly common with various medications. And if we can get ahead of those with something as simple as an over-the-counter vitamin or supplement, it's an easy fix to a lot of those things that are going on.
Oh, I appreciate that advice there. Yeah. So really good to go in knowing what to ask for with your doctor for blood work. Well, a lot of people that I do also talk to, they are living a healthy lifestyle, or they're striving to. Like, they're getting sleep, they're managing stress, they're socializing, doing all the things as we want them to do. Like, what can they do to optimize their brain health, in addition to living a healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, this is probably this is the second most common supplement question I'm ever asked. The most common one I ever get asked is about exercise and things like that. But when it comes to general health, if we're living our nice lifestyles, we're doing our thing, if we all pretend we're eating our perfect diets, myself included, all of that, the single most important thing that anyone could be taking is a multivitamin. And it sounds so boring, and I feel so bad providing that answer, because it's not a sexy, fun answer, but it is truly I take one every single day. And I'm very weirdly, I'm very limited with the amount of supplements I take. But every day I take a multivitamin like clockwork, because again, this is one of those things where it is very, very likely that everyone on this call, everyone that's going to watch it in the future, is deficient in something. And this is less a issue on us. It's more of an issue on our American health, dietary system, and the food we have access to, et cetera, and what we can get. And it's very, very likely. So 70% of the United States is deficient in vitamin D as just one thing. And a lot of that is because we don't go outside, where, I blame Netflix and all the other streaming services for that one. But think about when we move to our Zoom calls, we're not nearly spending as much time outside as we used to. And so now it's causing issues in our deficiencies. But a multivitamin can kind of ubiquitously solve that issue. And so that's where I go to anytime somebody says, what should I be taking? That one right there. And there's not one best multivitamin. I'm not going to try and pitch products or things like that, but really just you find one that sits well with you, that hits a nice price point, and that's going to generally do the trick. Other things that you can look at, fish consumption is generally not overly high in our country. It's very, very high if you look at the Asian countries, and maybe get into the Nordic areas. Even in Canada, fish consumption is much higher than it generally tends to be in the US. So fish oil becomes one that EPA, DHA, those are things that become really, really important if we're deficient. Fish oil plays important roles in things like inflammation, which also ties back to brain health. I'm sure that if you're reading the literature, I'm sure as Natalie has talked about, things like antioxidants, things like inflammation can all play a very significant role, not just in our general health, but our brain health as well. And so fish oil is something that can be really, really important there. We talked about vitamin D. Magnesium can be important, again, only if you're deficient. But it's about 75% of Americans tend not to meet the FDA's recommended amount for magnesium. So it's generally a fairly safe bet that there's some discrepancies there for most people. And they can, if you're low in magnesium, it can have issues with, bone issues. It can have heart rate, it can cause blood pressure issues, blood sugar issues, etc. And so being able to be getting your proper amounts of magnesium can also help to regulate a lot of other processes. There's I think 600 plus different processes in the body that magnesium helps regulate. And so if you're deficient, it can cause a cascading series of effects. But again, if you take a multivitamin, it's going to include fish oil, it's going to include magnesium, it's going to include vitamin D. The one that it might not include, which is pretty common and is gained a lot of traction recently, is probiotics. That gut health is becoming incredibly popular, not only among people, but in the literature and the science as well. And there's a lot of ties that gut health could do anything, could do everything. It's kind of becoming this. We talk about it right now like it's a magic pill. It's not quite that, but it could have a lot of effect on overall health. So helping to prevent illnesses or diseases. It can help things like inflammation regulation, help the immune function, even things like weight management, the way it affects our digestive systems. And people with irritable bowel syndrome, if you have issues with constipation, probiotics can play a very, very significant role if our gut health is a little bit out of whack.
Yeah, so it sounds like omega-3 or fish oil, a multiple vitamin and probiotics. Those would be maybe your top 3 supplements you would recommend, or is there something else?
Yep, I'd start with a multivitamin.
Okay.
You could take a fish oil if you're deficient. If you took a fish oil and you already have enough, you're just going to excrete it. So it's not really going to cause any issues. If you don't have enough, it'll do the trick. Magnesium is also one that you could probably check with your doctor about, because you can take too much magnesium. And probiotics, if you're getting, your daily kind of over-the-counter pill, whatever that is, those can, again, same concept, that if you already are fine, you're just going to excrete it. But the majority of the people eating the general American diet, most of us are deficient in probably that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, in taking, like, if a person is taking a vitamin, like sometimes for example, I've recently read that if you take vitamin D3, you want to take it with vitamin K, so it will help calcium get into the bones. Because I want strong bones, and I know a lot of us here want strong bones too. Is that true? Are there supplements that should be paired together?
Yeah, that's probably the one big one. When it comes to pairing supplements together, you have to be a little bit careful, especially if you're on any kind of medication, because one can cause a problem here, which can cause a problem there, and cause all kinds of cascading effects. Probably the most common, the most popular is that we call it the triad of vitamin D, vitamin K, and calcium. So if I was to go take a calcium supplement, it's not going to really do me any good. I'm not going to be able to absorb that well without vitamin D or having vitamin K in the mix to help my body kind of bring that in. And so that's probably the biggest one. There's a lot of others that could be effective, but again, most of the time they're going to be related specifically to medications. And then again, you'll want to make sure that you're talking with your physician about that. But if you are taking, if for my mother, for example, she's at risk for osteoporosis. And so her doctor has recommended that she takes a calcium supplement, and every day she also takes vitamin K and vitamin D as D3 as part of that. So that way she makes sure that she's actually getting it into her body properly.
Excellent, excellent. So good. I'm on the right track there. It's good to get to know. Yeah, so I also, people are having surgeries in this age bracket often, and wondering what is going to set them up to have a successful healing and recovery process after they get through that surgery.
That is one that is going to be very individual specific, and there's not a specific supplement or vitamin you want. I mean, things like anti-inflammatories, things like, antioxidants, all that. Again, I'll go back to the boring multivitamin can always be very helpful, but again, it's going to depend on what type of surgery you had, where was the surgery, what the recovery looks like. I mean, then you start getting to things like, are there things to help with energy, pain? And so there's a lot of different interactions that happen on that front. And it's really hard to provide a single recommendation for surgery in general, because it is so different for each individual, and it's so different based on, like, I can think of someone I worked with a while back who had gastric bypass surgery and was converting to veganism, and it was their entire lifestyle change. Very, very different recommended plan than somebody who maybe had broken arm and had surgery to fix a broken bone. They're completely different use cases. So I think it's at that point just very, very important that you're talking with your physician and looking at your own dietary needs and habits.
Yeah, I'm sure that usually there's some kind of guidance they would provide for like what to do post surgery and even pre surgery. Yeah. Um, well, for those, like you mentioned, like the idea of pain, like there are a lot of people who these days who are dealing with chronic pain. Talking about inflammation, you mentioned fish oil can help with inflammation. Is there any other supplements that can offer pain relief, like so you don't have to take those strong pain medications?
Yeah, there's one of the big ones that I like, and when I say I like, it just means because there's a lot of interesting research coming out about it right now, is turmeric and curcumin, maybe specifically curcumin. The reason I'm drawn to this one is because there's also a very significant link to brain health, when it comes to curcumin, when it comes to, again, anti-inflammatory properties, antioxidant, et cetera. But there's also some research that shows it could help with pain and help with reducing. Not it's not going to and it's not the end all be all magic pill to pain, but it does seem that there may be some things that show it could help kind of reduce pain and things like that, simply because of one study I think I can remember reading about even was able to show how it compared to taking like an ibuprofen, and showed that when people were blinded to whether they were taking the ibuprofen or the curcumin, or the placebo, they actually could not tell if it was the ibuprofen or the curcumin. So not definitive, but it does show that there may be some factors at play there that may be helping with pain relief. Fish oil is another one that's talked about a lot, in common. And speaking of combinations, is glucosamine and chondroitin. That was I had kind of a heyday when I was maybe about 10 years ago now. And I think it's still kind of stayed popular. And that one is kind of a coin flip, to tell you the truth. A lot of people that take it swear by it and they say it's been incredible and it's changed their life. And a lot of people that just take it don't. The research doesn't really support it one way or the other. One of the things that supplements get attributed to a lot is the placebo effect, which I think a lot of us has heard about. And so just that idea of thinking you're taking something for pain can actually help reduce pain. And it's kind of unbelievable how that works. And that's one of the proposed reasons why people think glucosamine, chondroitin, that combination really tends to work well. But again, there's been studies that have shown it does work. There's been studies that show it doesn't work as well. And it's worth a shot. I mean, if it's not if it's not one of those things that if you're taking it and just taking the regular daily pill with it, it's not going to hurt you, and it may help. So it's something that's worth thinking about. And those are probably the big. There's you can go down a list of 100 different things that people say will cure all your pain, but I'd stick with those as the primary recommendations if you're going to try something.
Yeah. All right. So I love that you mentioned how the placebo part of it. It just shows you how powerful our minds are, that we can tap into our own opioid store in our brain to help us feel better. Like, I think I did see a scan of someone's brain that showed when they were practicing gratitude, how it did help different parts of the brain light up. So I think there's something to that, how it can have an actual impact on our well-being.
Yeah, a lot of it is our own personal belief. If we believe it to be true, inevitably it will become true.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely like cultivating that positive mindset. And I can totally help you out with that in coaching sessions. Well, Jordan, you have answered so many questions. I want to be sure to get to everyone that might be here today, any of their questions. I did have some that were sent in. So real quickly, I'll just ask a couple of those and then I'll open up the floor to everyone else. One person asked, let's see, are there any supplements that need to be taken only at night or day?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one that's actually fairly common. The simple answer is no. But within reason. So for example, you wouldn't want to take melatonin when you first wake up in the morning if your goal is to get sleepy. You also wouldn't want to have your daily cup of coffee at, right before bed at night. And so as a heavy caffeine consumer, like I've made that mistake way too many times. And so I think it's more a matter of knowing what your goal is with that supplement and then making sure you're timing it appropriately. But for your generic ones, like for example, your multivitamin, not really, your omegas, whatever it is, whatever helps kind of fits into your routine. So when I take my morning vitamin, it sits there with, my morning routine. It's just part of my routine, and that's what helps me remember to do it. And so that's probably the simplest answer there. But again, you wouldn't want to take stimulants when you're getting ready to go to bed. You wouldn't want to take any like downer or anything like that when you're trying to get ready for work in the morning. So aside from those kind of concepts, there's not really any other issues.
Yeah. All right. And then which is better, refrigerated? Okay, this is going to be a tongue twister for me.
I'm guessing the word is acidophilus.
You got it. Thank you for helping me.
No worries at all.
Or a good quality one. Yeah.
I saw this question and I honestly don't know how to answer it because I don't think I understand it. If you are taking like a refrigerated acidophilus versus a good quality regular one, which is the question that came in, my default is a good quality regular one. I don't know. I don't think I know enough about if there's a major difference between a regular versus a refrigerated.
Yeah.
And I'd have to go and understand a little bit more before I could answer that.
Yeah. I mean, the one I take, it says to refrigerate it. So I put it in the refrigerator. Usually just follow what's on the bottle there can be a help. Yeah. Well, all right, everyone. Jordan, thank you so much. I want to just open up the floor. Does anyone here today have any questions or just comments on what Jordan has shared so far? You can feel free to unmute yourself, or you can also put some things in the chat box for us.
Well, I think that, I don't want to refer to taking supplements as a crapshoot, but I will. It's like it might work and it might not work. But really the same is true for prescription medications. They might work or they might not work. Not all of them, but so, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, personally, I would much rather take a supplement than I would a prescription medication. And one of the reasons is that you can start taking a prescription medication. And when you do, this happened to me, maybe a lot of people when I was younger, it was never explained to me that I might be taking this the rest of my life. And it's many years down the line. I don't know if, the same is true for supplements. I wonder if it is.
That's a good question. Like I said, with supplements, they can be like, I will probably continue to take a multivitamin for as long as I can, for that matter. But for others, so for example, if we talked about surgery, or if you're coming off of, if you're going on a trip and you're not going to have access to certain foods, there are times when maybe that the supplements can be very, very useful. If you're on vitamin K, for example, a really easy way to get off that or to not need it anymore, eat a bunch of spinach, and just incorporate those foods that most supplements are found in our diet. It can be found in the kind of the real world in our diets. And so it's really easy if we don't want to have to take that pill every day, or that whatever that might be, is just replacing it with something that we can find that it's naturally available in, like whether that be, you know, your nuts, your legumes, your vegetables, your fruits, whatever that vitamin may be. So it's a really good way to not have to take that every day. And I actually would always recommend, if you can, to get it from your daily diet as opposed to taking it in pill form.
Mhm.
Yeah, most Americans aren't getting enough fruits and vegetables. So that's like your guidance on take a multiple vitamin just to make sure you're covering that.
Yeah, that's generally because it's, and I do it too. I'm very confident. I do my best on a day-to-day basis. My wife would say I don't try hard enough, but I'm sure there are areas that I am deficient in. And aside from trying to go get blood work done once a month to understand what that is, it's just very easy to take that multivitamin. And if I need some things and don't need others, my body will kind of figure the rest out again. But just take your one, take it the recommended amount. Don't, you know, if it's one of those, supplements is not one of those if some is good, more is better concepts.
Mhm.
It is very much a, you know, consume the recommended amount, talk to your physician, do it in moderation. And it can be helpful, but it is definitely not, it's not a magic fix, and it's not a crutch. And so it's one of those things that we want to think of as like a tool in our toolkit, and not one of those things that can replace other things in our life.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I have more questions. If no one else has one, I want to ask while he's here. So just feel free to interrupt me at any time and chime in, everyone. So yeah, I often feel like taking glutamine could be a positive thing for those who are exercising, going to the gym, for muscle repair, recovery. Also, you know, curious to hear your thoughts on if it can support people who are dealing with nighttime cravings. Like what can you share about this nutrient of glutamine?
Oh, interesting. I don't think I know much about nighttime cravings. I'd have to go look into that one. But glutamine is very, very popular in the exercise world as well, because it's a building block of protein, and it helps us with, it can help, theoretically can help with like muscle recovery and repair, etc. It is one, it's found all over the place. It's in eggs, it's in beef, tofu, white rice, corn, etc. It's pretty common in our day-to-day diet. But it's also become very popular in the supplement world. So glutamine is very important for the immune system, and it plays a role in intestinal health. We talked about like muscle gain and exercise, etc. But studies are across the board really, really conflicted. Again, you're going to see there's no stamp that I would put on it and say that glutamine is crushing it in anything. I think if you're getting it, there's no the recommended amount's like 3 to 6 grams a day, but that's not from the FDA. That's just more of like what researchers have kind of put out into the science. And if you're getting that, you're probably going to be just fine. But if you're not, it might be able to help some of those other issues, like things like the intestinal health, things like the immune system, based on how it plays a role in immune cells and things like that. But again, it's like, and I feel this is where I hope it doesn't sound boring. And that's what I was kind of alluding to in the beginning, is there's never really going to be like yes, this is the thing that you can take and it's going to be incredible. It's more so like it could help in the right circumstances if maybe you're not getting enough of it in your day-to-day diet.
Mm-hmm. So kind of what I'm hearing is that some of this might be a little what I call trial and learning. So through experience, just maybe don't try a bunch of supplements all at once. Maybe like take one, test it out for like 4 to 6 weeks and see like how your body responds, any changes, and then maybe try something else possibly.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach, and always know like what is the issue you're trying to solve. Is it, maybe I'm not having GI issues, maybe I'm sleepy, whatever it is. try it, see if it solves it. But again, like this melatonin will be a good example of this. You don't want to need it. And that is something that tends to happen is, oh, I'm not sleeping well. I start taking a melatonin. Oh, this is great. Now, how do I get off this thing? How do I not need it anymore to help me sleep? And so I would recommend, it's not a bad thing if you are using it once in a while and maybe you just need a really good night's sleep because you have that big presentation or that big event the next day, and that helps. But it's really easy to fall into those patterns of needing it regularly. And so you want to try to avoid that. So trying other natural alternatives like going outside, taking your walks, eating a balanced diet, all of that can help with sleep as opposed to needing melatonin. And so I use that as an example, but that's kind of ubiquitous among all areas, is that you don't want to be stuck on, like Helen, you were saying a little bit earlier, stuck on that pill for the rest of your life if you can avoid it.
I have one more question, just one, and it is, if someone is on a vegan diet, they do a pretty good job with getting the supplements and nutrition that they need from the diet, but is there a certain, vitamin or something that vegans, lack, like maybe as a rule or something that a lot of them lack? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an area where we have kind of a special use case. You're eating very different dietary habits. Yes, there can be significant areas in which you can become deficient as a vegan. And I say that as like, it also depends if you are a good vegan or a bad vegan. And so what I mean by that is I think about a woman I knew in college who was a vegan, but she ate a lot of vegan Trader Joe's cookies. And so there is, I am a vegan because I'm eating a whole, very full, diet. And I eat a lot of Cheetos, and there's no animal byproducts in those Cheetos. So it very much depends on which kind of vegan you are. But regardless, you're not eating animal-based products. And animal-based products have a lot of different vitamin minerals like B12, vitamin D is very common, omega-3s, iron, calcium, zinc. There's all these very, very necessary nutrients that are contained in animal foods. That doesn't mean you have to eat animal foods to get them. They are available on a lot of different plant-based diets. Protein is one that people love to scream about, like, oh, I'm a vegetarian, how you get protein? There's so many protein sources from plant-based foods, but you just have to make sure that you're eating the right foods. And it's really easy to get, we probably all do this, whether we're vegan or vegetarian. It's really easy to eat the same thing on a regular basis because we just find things we like. And so it can become much easier for people who eat vegetarian or vegan diets to become deficient if they're eating pretty limited pools of food and not expanding out. Again, it's one of those where a blood test is incredibly helpful to know, but it's also really important to just take a look at what you're eating. Take a look at the nutrients I just mentioned that are most common in those foods. Iodine, another good example, and see if the food you're eating actually contain proper amounts of those nutrients. So you don't necessarily, it's always good to check with your doctor, but if you want to do it on your own, that's a way that you could do it. Look at the foods that you're eating on a regular basis. Look at, those nutrients that are commonly found in those animal-based foods, and just make sure you're getting enough of a replacement of those, based on how much is contained in what you're eating. So it's kind of a way to like self-triage your own diet in a sense, but it is very common for people that eat those types of diets to become deficient in certain nutrients if they're not careful.
And I've also heard like the essential amino acids that if you're vegan or vegetarian, if you're not getting enough protein, you might be missing that leucine. Anything that you can share about maybe essential amino acids for vegans? Would that be a helpful thing for them to supplement with?
It could be the same exact concept though. If you're eating a lot of legumes and beans or tofu or other, other plant-based sources that are very high in protein, you can get a lot of those amino acids naturally from those foods. But again, if you're not eating those foods, it's very easy to become short in leucine, isoleucine, valine. Some of those excuse me, some of those areas or those very, very essential amino acids that we have in the body. And so a little bit of a self triage and being honest with yourself. Are you actually eating a cup of that food, or is it more like I had 2 bites and I didn't finish it? Being honest with yourself and understanding like, oh, there's a chance that I could be deficient in some of these can be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times when I do ask participants like to track their food or to take food pictures, it does help them to get that awareness of what they actually like. What are you really eating? Because sometimes we think the best of ourselves, like myself included. But yeah, like being able to really honestly track in some form or fashion can be helpful.
You know, we do the same thing with exercise. You know, oh yeah, I exercise 5 days a week. Oh, but last week I was tired and I only got 1 day in. Oh, the week before I only got 2 days because I was at a wedding. It's really easy to think that we do something, but then if we think about it objectively, that we're not doing quite as well as we thought we were.
I know sometimes in coach sessions, talking to the ladies, really thinking about our aging skin. Got to ask this. There's, it's such a rage out there these days, the collagen powders. And you do hear that it's anecdotal, like it doesn't really help with your skin, with supporting collagen production. Like, I'm sure I can kind of guess your answer here, but just want to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, as someone who does not use it, I think it's very good marketing. I think it's very, very good marketing. But and I will admit, I have not spent a lot of time looking at skincare based vitamins or supplements. I have seen some stuff around vitamin D as like a topical that can be very helpful. Again, it's limited, but I wouldn't say that there is no efficacy to it whatsoever. I would just say I don't think we know enough. But I would always be careful putting something on your skin if you don't know how you're going to react to it, etc. I know my wife uses face topicals and things like that with different, I think vitamin D, vitamin K, similar. She uses it every day, but some people may react if you have eczema, if you have other issues, your skin can react very differently. So just be cautious about trying some things like that.
Does anyone else have a question or thought while we're here today? This has been so helpful, hasn't it, y'all? Haven't you enjoyed Jordan?
Yes, very much. I think I could stretch this out a lot longer than just session, but I'm sure everyone has things to do. I tried to find some supplements just to give me more energy, because when you get older, of course, you still want to exercise and not always have to get extra sleep and stuff like that. But I don't know, I started taking B's and B12. I don't think I needed it. I felt like it made me feel a little anxious, I don't know, or something. So I stopped taking it. But I wish there was some secret supplement you could take to give you energy, extra energy as we age.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, so I had to let the dog out. The love of working from home. So energy is an interesting one, and B12 is one that's very, very common. But like I think what you described was what Natalie had said earlier is a very good example of like a little bit of self-experimentation in a way. Like we're going to try it. Maybe we don't respond to it quite as well as we hoped we would. And we can move on to something else. There's a lot of supplements out there that will like claim to be the end all be all for energy. Especially if you don't want caffeine. Caffeine is, and I will say, like, I feel like caffeine gets a bad rap. I have absolutely no problem and no qualms with caffeine whatsoever when it's used in the right doses and the right amount. There's nothing wrong with your coffee. I've talked to a lot of people who are like, oh, I got off caffeine for health reasons. And there's actually a lot of literature that shows caffeine can be very beneficial to your health long term. It doesn't mean that 100% it is. It's, you look at, there's a lot of coffee literature and things like that. There's a lot of green tea literature. What is it related to? We're not 100% sure. But I am very much in the camp that caffeine is helpful when used appropriately. I use it every day. But if you're looking for alternatives to those supplements, or you don't feel, a lot of people feel really jittery on caffeine, they don't feel great. The one magic supplement to energy is outside. Believe it or not, is literally getting like, and I do this every day when you hit that fog and you start to wane a little bit in front of your computer. It is amazing what just getting outside, standing in the sun, as long as it's not raining, walking around the block, just getting away for 10, 15 minutes can do for your energy levels. And it's hard to get away, and it's hard for us to commit to that, but it is something that has been very, very well studied and proven to affect us in incredibly positive ways with increasing things like serotonin and dopamine. Exercise is another really good one to help, even just like, that's why the walking around the block helps a lot. You don't have to go and hit the gym and do these crazy workouts. But if you're looking for alternatives to supplements, those are things that we take for granted a lot. And it sounds too easy a lot of times to do that. But if we're objective and we really are honest with ourselves, most of us probably don't do that much on a day-to-day basis. I know I definitely don't do it enough. And my wife's out of town right now, but it's really easy for me to not go outside sometimes in a day. If I'm working in front of the computer all day and then it ends and I watch TV, whatever it is, it's really easy for me to just not do it. And then I wonder why I'm so tired. And so those are things that if we just keep those concepts in mind, that can be more beneficial than we realize, for advice that just kind of sometimes feels too simple.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is those simple things. And like you said, not taking, just being aware and having that appreciation for getting outside and moving your body and how good that feels, and that helps the blood flow, getting oxygen to the brain. And oftentimes I notice, like, I am eating like almost after I get out of a session with someone, I'm eating. It's like I'm eating all day long. And I know that my brain takes 20 to 30% of our calories. So I just kind of reassure myself, hey, I'm working that brain hard. I got to eat more. So that
I
does give me
think the
energy.
snacks you eat, Natalie, are a lot healthier than the snacks I might eat.
Yeah, probably no. I have my little treats. I do have a little sweet tooth, I gotta admit. And that's another thing, right, Jordan? Like sugar, it can cause those insulin highs and lows. So just being mindful of the sugar intake in your diet, and maybe if you are going to have sugar, maybe pair it with a healthy fat or a protein.
Yeah, make sure you're getting enough fiber to help kind of like slow your insulin spikes. If you're taking that in, all of that can be very helpful.
Yeah. Well, all right. Anyone else? Any last minute burning questions or thoughts? You feel free to check in. I just really, some of my takeaways today, I'm hearing that really getting clear on maybe what to ask your doctor for when you get your blood work done. Like, know what your deficiencies might be. So if you do want to take a supplement, that would probably be the way to go about it. Getting outside I call that enriched environments. If you're struggling to get outdoors, maybe like bring the plants inside, create that experience for yourself. That's going to bring some nature into your life to kind of boost your energy, support your the brain function too. And the multiple vitamin, of course. If we don't need it, our body's just going to get rid of it.
Yeah, for the most, yeah. You know what? We very likely all need something. And that's why generally my go-to recommendation is very few of us are eating so cleanly and well that that wouldn't help us, but it's very unlikely to hurt us. So it's a good risk reward kind of recommendation.
Yeah. Well, anyone else have a takeaway that they would like to share? Otherwise, we can just end our meeting now. Want to thank everyone for being here, Jordan. It's always it's so refreshing to get to talk to you. You have such vibrancy and such positive energy. It's been a real delight to get to talk to you today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Natalie. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone that joined in, and maybe everyone that's watching this in the future.